There's one golfer in this world that can hit the driver further than anybody else on the planet, and that man plays Cobra. Cobra just released their brand new Darkspeed driver lineup, and I've been thinking, can they actually make a driver longer and faster? Well, in this video, I'm gonna do a deep dive on all three heads, find out what driver might be best for your game, and I'm gonna do a test against last year's Aerojet to see if this year's driver is better than last year's, or if that's cap. Did I say that right? Cap? Is that what the kids are saying? Let's go. For the last number of years, Cobra has been really focused on speed and distance. I remember the LTDX series was one of my favorite drivers of a couple years ago, and then the Aerojet driver was in my top 2 drivers of 2023. I'm so excited to hit that Aerojet and compare it to the Darkspeed. If you're a fan of all black drivers or the murdered out look, as the kids say, this might be your new favorite visual driver possibly ever. I think these things look awesome. There is some very slight color difference between each driver head. I'm gonna dive into that just a little bit later. The 3 different driver head models this year are the Darkspeed Max, the Darkspeed X, and then the Darkspeed LS, which is their low spin head. The first driver I'm gonna start with is the Darkspeed Max. This is the driver that's designed for kind of the average golfer. It should be their most forgiving head, so if you don't find the center of the face every time, no problem. You should be able to get away with that on the Darkspeed Max. Also, if you wanna get some height on your ball, this might be a really good option too. It's also draw bias for all you slicers out there. I actually recently had one of the worst slices I've ever hit on the golf course. I was 2 fairways over. I ran into the cart girl and she asked if I was lost. So not my proudest moment on the golf course, but maybe this draw bias might help my game out. So let's start hitting this thing. If you're new to the channel, now's a great time to hit subscribe because I do a lot of club reviews like this one. And the next time I get a new club in my hands, you don't wanna miss that review. So looking at the ball at address, I notice a big difference from last year's Aerojet that there's no more titanium up to the face. We're going carbon all the way to the face. So that's the first thing that's new that I notice. The head shape is definitely pulled back, so it's almost triangular. Not totally, but I noticed that the top line is kind of just pulled back. So let's start hitting this thing. We are filming at Modern Golf in Calgary, Alberta. We are using a TrackMan, a Pro V1 RCT ball. The elevation on our TrackMan is set to Calgary elevation, which is about 3,400 feet. So just so you get an idea that at elevation, you hit it just slightly further and it's, you know, good for my ego. First thoughts overall on the feel is that the face feels relatively firm. I wouldn't classify this as like a soft feeling driver. It feels pretty firm and so far I'm getting decent results. Typically on like a max or a forgiving or player improvement driver, typically my spin's pretty high, but so far I'm sub 3,000, which is good for me. But if you're someone that needs spin, spin can be your friend. If you need to get the ball up in the air, spin will be a really good driver option for you. So a lot of you guys that are familiar with my channel, that have seen a lot of my videos, will know that my club speed, my ball speed is typically higher than what I'm getting right now. I'm not sure if I'm fatigued because this is our second driver that we've reviewed this week, but it's gonna be interesting when I hit the Aerojet later on to see if my numbers are comparable, just because normally I feel like I'm swinging faster than I am right now. Something really cool that I like this year that Cobra did is Cobra is color coordinating their driver lineup with the stock shaft options. So I said there were some very subtle colors. On the Darkspeed Max, there's some subtle red accents. The stock options for the Max, they give you the UST Link red or the hazardous red. So the shafts match the drivers. The characteristics of those shafts are like a high launch, mid to high spin for those guys that want to get the ball up. I don't know why it bugs me when the shafts don't match the head. Maybe that's like my OCD kicking in, but I have some other buddies that have OCD that I think they're gonna like the new color combos of the new Cobra lineup. Something Cobra is sticking with is carbon, very much like its competitors in the driver market. We know that carbon is lighter, so it allows you to move weight around. Cobra is sticking with a titanium face and it's still the hot face. Hot stands for high optimum topology, which I'm still not really sure what that means, but I'm sure that there's some science behind it to make you hit it further and straighter. So let's keep hitting this. So far this Max actually does feel really good. Something that I do really like so far on the Max is that I have no troubles getting the ball in the air. In previous sessions with other drivers, I've been around the like 9-degree, almost 8-degree launch angle, and I'm getting this up to 13. The driver head I have is a 10.5. I've dialed it down to a 9.5. So it's still like the regular loft that I play, but getting the ball in the air is easy, and that might be because the driver head is stretched out. There's more weight in the back, helping the ball get in the air. Cobra basically redesigned this head shape to reduce drag. If there's any drag in your driver swing, it's gonna be swinging slower. The new head shape is supposed to be designed to make it go faster. Am I finding that to be true right now? Not really. Another thing that they changed is they actually made the face bigger, and this is perfect for you guys who missed the center of the club face. A bigger club face basically means you have more places to hit the golf ball. With that said, I think a low handicap could play this driver. I think that forgiveness is awesome, especially when driving the golf ball. So even though this is like a player improvement or a game improvement club, I could still see low handicap players hitting this driver. I'll let you know the shaft that I'm gonna be using for all of these driver heads is an upgraded shaft. This is the Ventus 6X TR Blue. It's not offered as a stock option, it is an upgraded option. It's just a shaft that I've got along with in other Cobra driver heads. And because the stock option for like the Max is a high launch, high spin, that just doesn't necessarily mesh with my golf game. And this is another reason why I definitely vouch that you guys get fit. Getting fit is gonna help you get the best combination of a head and shaft. And if you wanna get fit in Canada, you should check out Modern Golf. Pretty good. Okay guys, that's my 10 hits. Let me go over the data really quick. Okay guys, we got 10 hits. Let me kind of go through my averages. Average club speed was 116. I would say that is maybe just slightly below my average. I like to think I'm like 117, 118 on normal. Ball speed was 169, so creeping into 170, which is pretty decent. The spin is relatively high, and I had a feeling that was gonna happen. Not as high as other forgiving drivers, but at 3,100, that's just not super ideal for me. Average carry was 302 with a 322 total. For me and my experience with Cobra, I think we can do better. So maybe the X will go further, and then the LS will go further as well, but they shouldn't be as forgiving. Let's look at my dispersion. I was relatively consistent with my distance. Dispersion wasn't fantastic. I could probably play around with the head settings to narrow it a little bit, but I still had 2 on the green on this short par 4, so I'll definitely take that. Nothing crazy. So from a forgiveness standpoint, I think I had a couple swings that felt like really big slices. And if my really big slice with the Max driver is only like 10 yards, 15 yards off my target, I would say that it's actually a relatively forgiving driver. On to the Darkspeed X. We have graduated from the most forgiving driver. Maybe you've gotten a couple lessons. You kind of start to figure out how the grip works. Maybe you're starting to shot shape the ball, but you might still miss hit it on occasion. This is like that middle ground between their most forgiving and their least forgiving. So I know a ton of you golfers would be fit into this Darkspeed X. So what's changed between the Max and now the X? First, there's some color change. So now we're going into some blue accents. Like the Max, Cobra has color coordinated the shafts to the head. The stock options for the X are the Kaylee blue, or Kylie, I'm not really sure how to say it, and then the Link blue. So now we're getting into a mid-trajectory, mid-spin. So you might have some decent club head speed. You got no problem getting the ball in the air. This is gonna bring it down just a little bit compared to the Max. There's also some weight change differences. So because the Max was a draw bias, there was the heel weight and then the back weight. Now, because this is a neutral bias, the 2 weights are there's one behind the face, one behind the head. If you want to get the ball higher in the air, put the heavyweight at the back. If you want more ball speed, you want to hit it maybe a little bit harder, put the heavyweight in the front. So those are the only 2 options. On the hosel setting, you can still change it between plus or minus a couple degrees. You can put it on a draw setting. So there's still a lot of flexibility that you can use to adjust this driver head. Looking at the ball at address, it definitely looks a little bit more compact, a little bit smaller than the Max driver. I think it still looks really good. There's no other big differences, just maybe not as pulled back. It just doesn't look as big as the Max. Might be a duck hook. Oh, maybe not. So in that last swing, it felt to me like I duck hooked that. It felt like my face shut and I was pulling it hard left. But this is showing that the X is still relatively forgiving. What was it? 57 feet left of my line. It rolled a bunch. A draw will release a lot more, but I'm actually surprised with the forgiveness level so far out of the X. Right away, I'm noticing some speed increase. So I wasn't seeing this in the Max, but I'm seeing it in the X. Club head speed, that last one went up to 119, 174 ball speed. Spin was perfect at 2200 spin, 2259. Launch is a little bit lower than the Max. That was like 10-degree launch. 309 carry, 344 total. Like, come on, that felt really good. So far, I really like the feedback up and down the face. I'm not a big fan of drivers that feel the exact same off the toe as the middle of the face. That last one I hit low and I could feel that. So me personally, I like feedback across the driver face because I want to feel when I did something that maybe I didn't intend to do. So I would say that the feel is actually really good in this head. Felix, we're back.
We're back.
We're back. We're so back. I was getting worried, guys. I thought that my speed had left me. This is really good. I am really, really impressed with this driver. 119 club speed, 175 ball speed, spin 2282, over 10-degree launch. Like, is it gonna get better with the LS? Something else I like on the crown of the Darkspeed is the Cobra logo where you line up the ball is black. It's like kind of between like a shiny and a matte black. I like that it doesn't really stand out. It's kind of like black rims on a black car. Like you see that it's there, but it's subtle. I think if it was like white or blue or another color, I think it would annoy me. I like knowing that it's there, but it kind of blends in. That was a really good session. Let's take a look at this. Okay, let's compare this to the Max. Club head speed average with the Max was 116.9. With the X, it's gone up to 119, so I'm swinging it faster. Ball speed went from 169 to 172, so the ball speed has increased. Spin came down, which is really good for my game. Launch angle came down a little bit. It's still a 10.5-degree head dialed down to 9.5, but I could maybe play around with the weight setting if I wanted to maybe get the ball a little higher in the air. The carry went up, so it went up 4 yards. And then the total went up big time. So I went from a 322 total to a 337 total. Couple things. It's not going as high, so the roll will be a little bit further is kind of what I'm attributing that to, but also the increase in club head speed and ball speed. Let's look at my dispersion. Way better dispersion with this head. Look at that compared to the Max. See how much tighter that is? I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the green. I was hitting 60% on the green, and look how tight that dispersion was. So for like a player's driver or moving towards a player's driver to be that consistent and that forgiving, that was like an awesome session. I'm actually blown away. I don't know if I can get as tight with the LS, but we're gonna find out shortly. So far, personally, I'm a bigger fan of the X than the Max, but I wouldn't really say that I qualify into the Max. So far, I'm loving this X. Let's see how the LS compares and if it can improve these numbers. That's tight, bro.
That's really good.
Guys, now we're on to the LS, the low spin model. This is what the tour players are using. This is what Ricky Fowler is trying out. This is what Kyle Berkshire would be using. This is the player driver. What I find kind of cool and interesting about the LS driver is that it has the most flexibility for weight on the sole. They have the heel weight, a toe weight, and a, what are we gonna call this? A rear weight. You can play around with it to make it a draw bias, a fade bias. You can put the heavy weight in the back to help get the ball in the air. And you still have the hosel settings to go plus or minus a couple degrees, standard, draw. This has the most adjustability out of any of the heads. Looking at it, do I think it looks smaller than the X? Not really. I would say this looks very close to the X. Certainly smaller than the Max, but I'm really excited to hit this. And then after I hit this, we'll hit the Aerojet and we'll compare the data. So far, I think we're getting some speed improvements, and I find that the face feels maybe the firmest. It maybe feels the heaviest too when I take it back. I find at impact, it feels very firm. That's neither good or bad, it's just how it feels through impact. So when I was doing my research on the Darkspeed, I actually had a call with Cobra, and I was asking them, like, I see a lot in the comments that, oh, Cobra's already maxed out what they can do for the face, or they've maxed out what they can do for their weight. How can they improve this? Basically what Cobra said is, you know, they leave it up to their engineers, that the engineers are always doing something to improve some area of the club. So for example, like the power bridge in the club head has actually been moved up slightly towards the face. In theory, more weight behind the face should help you hit it further. Obviously, they would do some extensive testing to make sure that, yes, that is actually making the driver better. So even though if some area of the driver is already maxed out, they're looking at other areas of the driver to improve it. And I think that's what you want from a club manufacturer. That felt tagged. Remember when I said I didn't think I was swinging fast? Yeah, just forget all about that. Oh God. They've created a monster. For those of you that swing it fast, you have to hit this. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay, let's look at the forgiveness. Terrible hit. Yeah, that was my terrible swing. Club came flying out of my hands. My smash factor was 1.4, so not great. Still carried 302, 332 total, and it looks like it stayed in the fairway. That was a Hideki. That's a jug. Jug violation. Do you guys play with jug violations? Jug violation would be you're playing with your buddies, they hit a drive, they let go of their club, they're complaining, and it's 300 yards middle of the fairway. Jug violation. So someone say JV, at the end of the round, that guy owes a jug of beer. Make sure you hold him to it. I get so many JVs, mostly whining JDs. I'm such a whiner on the golf course. Last one. Before I get into the numbers on the Darkspeed LS, let me hit the Aerojet LS so we can compare the two to see if there's improvements. Okay, I'm gonna hit the Aerojet. This is the Aerojet LS, exact same settings as the LS Darkspeed that I just hit. Let's see, I remember loving this driver. So does the Aerojet sound and feel different than the Darkspeed? Yes. I would say that the Aerojet feels slightly softer. The Darkspeed feels a little firmer, but again, neither good or bad. That's just a slight difference that I feel. Like if I was gonna name a driver,
yeah, what would you call it?
I would call it the New 9 Golf Forgiving Driver, the New 9 Golf Moderate Driver, and the New 9 Golf Far Fast Driver. I know for a fact some of you are gonna make fun of the Darkspeed name. I wanna know in the comments, what would you name a driver? There's so many different drivers out there and they all have kind of funny, quirky names. So if you know everything about everything, what would you name a driver? Okay guys, that wraps up all my hitting. Now we can compare the Darkspeed LS to last year's Aerojet LS to see if there's any improvements. Okay, first looks here. So this is the Aerojet data. You can see I had one get away from me way left. Average club speed, 118. How does that compare to the X? X was faster by 1 mile an hour, Max was slower. So it's still pretty relative, right? Ball speed was 173. How does that compare to the X? So ball speed was actually just barely up. Not by much though, right? Spin, perfect, 2,500, 310 carry, 338 total. Okay, now let's look at this year's Darkspeed LS. 2 miles an hour faster in club head speed. Ball speed was up 2 miles an hour. Spin was actually down. Launch was comparable, one difference. Let's look at the carry. I was actually carrying the Aerojet further, but it had 1 degree higher launch, so maybe that was the reasoning. But total distance has improved on average 4 yards. That's pretty cool. Let's look at the dispersion. So this is the Aerojet LS. So there's a reason why it was in my top 2 drivers of 2023. Super tight dispersion. I had that one get away from me. The distance was relatively pretty consistent and I had 4 on the green. Looking at the Darkspeed LS, I still had 4 on the green, but my dispersion maybe wasn't necessarily as good. I'd be interested what you guys think in the comments, what I should try for a shaft. I've been through a lot of different driver shafts, but I'm open to changing. I think with the right shaft combination, I could definitely narrow this dispersion. For me though, the standout was the X, right? For my game, I thought I had, obviously I had the most on the green. I didn't have any, well, I had 1 in the trees, that far right one, but I didn't have any go left. So again, if I go Darkspeed LS, Darkspeed X, and then the Darkspeed Max, I think without question, the Darkspeed was going just as far almost as the LS. Let's compare those two. LS was 1 mile an hour faster, ball speed was faster, carry was within 2 yards, total distance was further in the LS, but I think for whatever reason that I was just keeping the X closer to my target line. So is there improvements in the Darkspeed LS or the Darkspeed lineup? Certainly. Is it like 10 yards difference or 10 mile an hour difference? No, but they are making improvements, and I think that's what you want to see out of a club manufacturer. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, what you think of the Darkspeed lineup. Are you going to hit this? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again for watching this video. I'll check in with you guys next time.